All right, let's dive in. Today, we're getting into the mind of philosopher Alan Watts and his ideas about consciousness. And trust me, they might just flip the way you see everything. If you've ever felt like your own mind is a total mystery, then you are in exactly the right place.
So, let's start with this central puzzle that Alan Watts thought was right at the heart of being human. Why is it that the one thing we're with 24/7, our own awareness, is so ridiculously hard to actually pin down and understand? Watts had this great way of framing the problem. A fish doesn't really know it's in water, right? A bird doesn't think about the air it's flying through. And in that same way, we can't really get a handle on our own mind. You just can't know your own element because you've got nothing else to compare it to. So, this brings us to our first big idea, the invisible element. It's all about that huge challenge of trying to see the very thing we're existing in. It's all around us, sure, but way more importantly, it's all inside of us. I mean, really think about it. The fish has no concept of not water. It can't just hop out onto the bank and look back at the pond. Well, it's the same for us. We have no outside perspective, no external reference point to understand our own awareness. We only know what it's like to have been unconscious, not what it's like to be unconscious. It's the ultimate catch-22.
Now, to really drive this home, Watts used this simple but kind of brilliant story. It's just a little conversation, but it reveals something absolutely massive about how we perceive reality. So, you see how this works? Every single figure, everything we see needs a background for it to even exist for us. The flowers pop because of the hedge. The hedge stands out from the hills. The hills are silhouetted against the sky. But then you ask that last question, and crickets. You've hit a wall. There's nowhere else to go. And that silence is the profound answer. Consciousness isn't a thing inside the universe. It's the ultimate background that the entire universe appears on. It's that silent, invisible space where every thought, every feeling, every single perception shows up. Okay, so if we can't define consciousness as a static thing, Watt says, well, let's just change the whole game. He wants us to stop looking for objects and start seeing the activity that's going on underneath it all. His proposal is pretty radical. Let's stop thinking about the universe as this collection of separate nouns, stars, trees, people. What if instead we saw it as a universe of constant flowing verbs? The world isn't a bunch of things, it's a whole lot of happening.
And the word Watts uses for this fundamental action is patterning. It's not an object, it's the process, it's what's going on. From this point of view, consciousness isn't something you have, it's a kind of patterning that you are. Just like a star is stellar patterning, and a tree is botanical patterning. And this is where it gets really interesting, because how do these different kinds of patterning, the physical stuff and the mental stuff, actually work together to create the world that we know? So to get a handle on this, Watts says we need to think in terms of spectra. And a spectrum is really simple. It's just a continuous range of related things, like energies or qualities. And you can find these spectra literally everywhere. There's the spectrum of light, right? And most of it is invisible to us. There's a spectrum of sound. But you can even imagine a spectrum for emotions, like love, or for all the infinite shapes and thoughts out there. So how do all these different spectra, the physical, the emotional, the mental, all come together to create one single cohesive reality? For this, Watts gives us this beautiful and really powerful metaphor, weaving.
So first, picture the threads on a loom that run lengthwise, up and down. That's called the warp. Let's imagine this represents one kind of pattern, like, say, the physical wiring of your brain. Okay, now picture another set of threads, the woof, that get woven side to side through that first set. This represents another pattern, like all the thoughts and feelings that are running through your mind. And here is the absolute key to the whole thing. Neither the warp nor the woof can make the fabric by itself. You can't have thoughts without a brain, and a brain without thoughts is just a lump of matter. They totally depend on each other, and it's how they interlock that creates the patterned cloth of your reality. And all of this brings us to the final grand metaphor that ties this whole philosophy together. And it's one that puts you, the person watching this, right in the center of creation. So I want you to think of the entire universe with all its interlocking patterns and spectra, not as some kind of cold machine, but as a vast cosmic harp with an infinite number of strings. This shows us that how we perceive things isn't passive at all. The strings of the harp are all the potential realities. The act of plucking those strings,
That's your attention. It's what you choose to focus on. And the music that comes out, well, that's your reality. Think about it. A musician doesn't just slam all the keys on a piano at once. And we don't perceive everything either. Our eyes only see this tiny sliver of the light spectrum. Our ears only hear a small range of frequencies. Our attention is constantly filtering, selecting, and choosing which notes to bring out of the silence. And in this really powerful final idea, the act of perception is the act of creation. By choosing which strings to pluck with your attention, you are actively weaving the fabric of reality. You're not just a listener in the audience, you are the musician. And that leaves us with one final, huge question that turns this whole philosophy right back to you. The cosmic harp is in your hands. Its infinite strings are just waiting. So, what reality, what experience, what kind of music are you going to choose to play?